Welcome to the 4th annual VESS Virtual Residency Fair. Dr. Smeds started the Virtual Residency Fair during the pandemic, and I'm really excited that we are keeping that momentum going with over 149 applicants registered for this event. We have 41 programs participating, and I want to introduce the program and kick it off on behalf of Dr. Mark Conrad, who is this year's VESS president. You'll be hearing from Dr. Paulina Villanueva, PGY3 at Ohio State University, and Blake Murphy, PGY3 University of Washington. So after Dr. Villanueva and Dr. Murphy give their presentations, we will have a panel consisting of Dr. Nick Gavsiev, Eric Piatto, Lorela Weiss, Kat Delosa, and Ryan Gedney. So without further ado, Dr. Villanueva, please kick off the program.
Angela, I think I need to disable screen sharing, or you're able to enable me to share my screen.
All set.
Oh, there we go. Excellent. Can everyone see my screen, my presentation?
Hit it again.
Okay. Can you guys see?
Not yet.
Okay.
Can the part, there we go.
Oh, perfect. Sorry for that. Good evening, everyone. My name is Paulina Villanueva, and I am a PGY3 vascular surgery resident at The Ohio State University. And today we'll be speaking about important things to consider when choosing a residency program. Keep in mind that the relative importance of these factors will depend on the person. Residency program location is consistently ranked as one of the most important factors that affect residency selection by most medical students. Wanting to practice in a certain geographic area may be related to access to family and also a belongingness to your community, as well as a desire to work for this community after completing residency. The next three factors, academic versus community practice, program volume, and program size, I group together as I believe that these three factors combined create a program type. With these, some of the important components of these include the reputation of the program. Higher ranking or a perceived reputation may facilitate your ability to transition into an academic practice after residency. The number of hospitals that you will cover, academic programs may cover several hospitals, and this is directly related to the amount of resident coverage that is expected from the residency program. The resources that you have available, including the variety of rotations that are offered to you. Other factors like, for example, the availability of statistical support as well as resident wellness programs may be associated with the larger hospital. Training duration. So vascular surgery and general surgery are generally 5 years of clinical work. However, several programs have implemented 1 or 2 years of research. If this is something that fits into your timeline, then this is something to consider. However, if no research years are offered, are you still able to participate in research during your clinical years, and how is that integrated into your training? And then moving forward to other aspects such as open versus endovascular cases and the complexity of cases. Generally, higher complexity cases are associated with academic institutions because these may be associated with having extra resources, like, for example, specialized intensive care units that are able to handle more complex patients. And then fellowship. So obviously academic programs are generally associated with having fellows, and how is the integrated residency program, if they have fellows available, how are those two programs merged together, as well as the residency size. Do you want to be part of a large residency program, or do you prefer to be one of 5 or one of 10? Obviously there's benefits to both depending on what aspects of your training you're looking for. The next two factors are program benefits and the cost of living. So evaluating the overall value of your resident benefits. These include resident stipends, right? So most resident stipends are generally the same around the country. However, certain programs may offer you more money, but this is generally related to a higher cost of living. Health insurance is generally provided by most programs. Parking and meal stipend can be variable, and hospitals in larger cities may be unable to provide parking for you or have free parking available, and this is an additional expense that you have to account for, as well as the availability of food and meals when you're on call. Protected education time is also important. So how is this structure for your program? How many hours per week? And who is covering your clinical duties while you are in your education, your educational activities? And lastly, how many days a week or how many weeks of the year do you have off? What happens around the holidays? Do you transition into a 5 days off, 5 days off schedule? And I think these all kind of play into your the benefits of the program. The next two are the call type and the rotation schedule that you have. So will you participate in a model that practices a golden weekend in which you work 2 weeks and then get a week off? Sorry, work 2 weeks and then get a weekend off? Or are you in a program that will be 1 day off or per week average? When you are taking into account your junior call, are you taking vascular junior call? Are you taking general surgery junior call? Or are you taking both? Because these can affect, obviously, the number of hours that you'll be working. And then as you move forward in your training and you transition into your senior call, is this in-house call or are you home call? And the frequency of these calls are important things to consider when selecting a program. And then for this category, lastly, will be how is your general surgery training distributed amongst your vascular surgery training? Are you doing your first 18 months of general surgery at the beginning without vascular, or is this integrated throughout your junior years of training? Most vascular surgery programs will have the final 2 years exclusively as vascular surgery training. And then the last two factors to consider are intangible factors and just overall, how do you fit in with this program? How do you get along with your co-residents? The variety of staff and their interests. For example, what type of research do they do, and are they able to include you in these activities? And then something that I find particularly important is how do you get along with your program director? Do their vision for the program align with your expectations as a resident? And then you put all of these factors together to kind of come up with a work-life balance in the setting of being a surgery resident. Thank you so much for listening. And of course, I'll be available during the breakout sessions if you guys have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Villanueva. Dr. Murphy, look forward to hearing from you next.
Awesome. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Oh, goodness. All right, so I'm going to give a quick 5-minute breakdown of how to prepare for a virtual interview. You know, myself and a few others on the call were kind of the first round of virtual interviews, and so we had a lot of practice, and it's been a topic of conversation, I think, this year for the applicants applying into this cohort. There's, from what I understand, going to be a mix of virtual interviews and in-person interviews. So it's good to have a kind of a familiarity with how to do both. So a couple of things. You want to set yourself up for success. That's, I think, the big highlight here. You want to know your audience and you want to know your interviewers. Sorry, I'm gonna just get rid of this. Alrighty. And then you want to check in and reassess both with yourself and your mentors, and then also the people that you've entered with along the interview trail. I think a really important part of the interview process is not falling behind on your post-interview follow-up, because I think in the realm of virtual interviews, you tend to do more interviews than you would in person. So there's a lot more kind of touch points that you have with faculty, people that you've met along the way, you know, other residents, and then also your kind of co-interviewees and applicants. And I think the most important thing is if and when you can have fun along the way, it's a really important part of the process. I think because it goes by quickly, and it's something I think you'll carry with you for a really long time. So setting up for success, setting the scene, you want to establish a really quiet place if possible to complete your interviews. For me, sometimes that was at my home, and my husband would be working in the background, or I'd have a conversation with my cats about being really quiet, or sometimes it was a call room at the hospital. Other times there were moments when it was in my car. But having a quiet place for yourself is really important. You want to check that your Wi-Fi connection is going often, and then you want to get a ring light, because you want to. Secondly, you want to stay organized. So setting up an Outlook or an email on your phone to stay regularly updated with interview invites is really important. I think I sent all of my interview invites to my Gmail instead of my Loyola email at the time, just to be able to check it a little bit more. So that's totally up to you. But oftentimes, especially when you're getting those interview invites, it's not the case as much as it previously was. But sometimes those interview spots are limited. You want to use a calendar and tracking mechanism for interview dates and pre-interview dinners. I think this, you guys are going to be this cohort where you're going to be mixing both virtual interviews and then also in-person interviews. So it's going to be particularly important for you guys to stay really organized. And then there are going to be times that you can double book interview options, but it should be avoided when possible. Those days are really long and it can be logistically difficult, but if you got to do it, you got to do it. And most importantly, you want to have several outfits ready if possible, especially when you're moving from point A to point B. I took a lot of my interviews in the hospital when I was on ICU or surgery rotations, which is just the way that my schedule worked out. And you want to roll with the punches. This is my cat Crush, who accompanied me on quite a lot of interviews. So you want to know your audience and your interviewers. I think it goes without saying, having a brief understanding of where the institution is, who you're interviewing with, if possible, if you get a schedule. Where's the institution located? What is the common practice focuses of the program? What are research are these institutions research oriented, or do they offer research time? So for example, I'm interested in research, but the University of Washington didn't offer a dedicated research path at that time. That being said, I'm planning to do a T32 and work it into my experience here in residency through the general surgery program. So those are really important questions to ask along the way. Are there any specific research interests of the program director or the division chief? Because that can oftentimes drive a lot of your opportunities. You want to be prepared for program specific and general interview questions. So for me, why the University of Washington? Why vascular surgery? Describe an interesting case. Where do you see yourself in 10 to 15 years? Because we all know where we're going to be in 5. Tell me about one of your hobbies. And then also being prepared for behavioral type questions related to teamwork, communication skills, patient-facing skills, and your ability to adapt, time management, which is so important, and your motivation and your values, because ultimately these training programs are anywhere from 5 to 7 years. And you have to know why you're doing this, and the programs that you interview with also want to know that. And a lot of this information can be found, on the websites of each of the programs. And then checking in along the interview trail. I think people are very different in how they organize, their rank list. So for me, I used a spreadsheet, and then halfway through the interview trail, I said, I got to listen to my heart, because at the end of the day, it was vibes or it wasn't vibes. And that's how I created a spreadsheet, as opposed to location and points and tracking. So find what works best for you, especially if you have a partner or family that you want to be close to or taking into account. And just do it, because it's going to be a long trail, a long interview trail with a lot of factors. And for me, this was what ended up happening, where I essentially, after every interview, I kind of redid my rank list, and then also helped track whether I had sent a thank you letter, or and where it fell on my rank list. And then again, as I said, if you can have fun along the way, this is really important. Our interview class didn't really get to ever meet each other in person, and a lot of us ended up getting to go to the Houston Methodist. pre-training boot camp, and it was like we had known each other for years. So make friends with the people that you meet along the way. They're going to be your colleagues for life, and they're going to be your sources of support in and around this process, and hopefully for years afterwards. And last but not least, too, just roll with the punches. I can't explain enough how many times my ring light, for example, fell over because my cat was getting a little too comfortable. And there are going to be moments in the virtual interview process where people know stuff happens. People are going to know that you're muted, and you're going to unmute and do it. So give yourself a little grace. Everybody else is giving you grace, and have fun. Thank you.
Great presentations. Thanks, Dr. Villanueva and Dr. Murphy. We're moving on to the panel discussion, and we'll have some open questions. So applicants, please put in your questions through the Q&A function of the Zoom. As we wait for some questions to funnel in, our panelists, do you have any pearls, any words of wisdom for the incoming applicants, things that worked well, things you know now that you wish you knew back then?
I can comment. I mean, Dr. Rohrer, I'm from Colorado, so clearly we work together. I mean, me getting in was a little different. I was kind of I was in the general surgery track, and then I was doing research and ended up switching in as we opened up the program. So I don't have the same experience, interviewing wise, but I could say that, the best advice I guess I could give interviewees is, one, I definitely agree with what was said before. You want to make sure that, like, the people you meet, like, you can connect with, like, the conversations you have, the other fellows there, residents, whoever you meet on the interview trail at the particular institution, are these people you can, that you get along with, similar interests, someone you'll be talking, you could have a conversation with, because you'll be seeing a lot of them. And there'll be some of them who you're speaking to will be your mentors. So in a place that you go to and, you're not really getting those vibes for some reason, I mean, cross them off the list, unless there's some other very specific reason that you want to be there. Two, I would say, if you have a particular interest in vascular that's more specific, the places you're at, find out if they're doing that. If you want to know, complex aortic work, thoracic work, are they doing that? Or if you want to do something different, also, you got to find out, is the program you're trying to go to going to give you those skills? Because you don't want to end up finishing your however long your training is and realizing that you may not have gotten the experience that you wanted. And so those are kind of the tidbits I would say.
Great.
I'm Lorella from Loyola. I would say something I learned after I started residency was this idea of you have both mentors and sponsors. So the idea of sponsorship, it's going to be someone who is going to vouch for you and advocate for you and put you in roles that you normally would not be able to maybe get on your own. Such as being a panelist at a big conference, or I mean, there's a variety of committees that you can be involved in. And this is just I mean, you think you're going into residency to learn how to be a surgeon and just the vascular pathophysiology of it, but it's really going to help grow you as a person, to be involved in all these different aspects of the vascular community. And so looking at each program, I think, is going to have people who are really involved at the national level or regional level, and maybe just seeing if they're involved in roles that you're interested in, I think could be really helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Weiss. We have our first question trickling through from Ye Rim Park. What were some questions you asked programs that helped you figure out their vibe?
I think I can start off with that one. Hi everyone, I'm Eric Piatto. I am a integrated vascular resident at Northwestern. We have 2 years of research. So I'm a PGY 6, I guess, but clinical 4. I think the big thing is I moved to a city that I'm not familiar with. I've never been to Chicago. I'm not from the Midwest. So I think it's true to be very authentic on what you want professionally as well as who you are personally. And so I think one thing that I see happen with applicants is that they don't necessarily talk about their what excites them about life, their hobbies, their interests. And I think, you realize that residency is very difficult. You're going to be here for 5 to 7 years. It's going to consume a lot of your life. So it's important to be upfront, kind of what you care about. And I think based on that, I think when everyone talks about what are the vibes, I think that's when you realize if the vibes are on or off for certain places. So on that note, I think I was very focused on a certain geographic region. And during the interview process, I think I was very surprised, good and bad, on certain residency programs. So some places where I never thought I would interview or want to interview, and I go there and I was very shocked because of how supportive the staff were. So don't just assume things based on a region, a city, or even like what you think of an institution's name is historically.
Excellent. And next question, with geographic preference being new to UMass, how do you think it'll affect program preferences in choosing an applicant? Does not having a geographic preference affect you negatively?
I could maybe talk about that. So I'm originally from the South, and I had kind of a unique situation where I think a lot of programs assumed that I would be unwilling to leave the South whenever I was looking and whenever I was interviewing. So I don't think not having a preference will impact you negatively. I think it means that for a lot of programs, you're not necessarily set on being in a specific area. If you interview somewhere, it won't take you off of that list. If you specify that you'd like to be in another geographic region. I think if anything, it might help you not to specify unless you are specifically trying to think that you're going to be really wanting to go there. That being said, if you're I'm dead set on ending up in a particular place, to specify a specific region that you're
I think maybe it may just be me that Dr. Delosa, you're kind of cutting in and out.
Unless it's for to be closer to family. And that's something that you should probably
And thank you. And then two more.
During the process of interviewing.
Some little bit of a tough.
Oh, sorry.
Kind of breaking up there towards the end. I think we got the gist of it. And please follow up with Dr. Delosa when you visit the UC Davis breakout room or send her a chat. Two more questions. We've got a couple minutes and these are all excellent and we can address these during the residency fair as well. So what was your major challenge when choosing a residency program? And then for the residents, how should you take an interview that felt scripted and unpersonable? While at the pre-interview dinner, the residents were very friendly and welcoming. Blake is going to answer that one. So maybe we can answer the first one live as Dr. Murphy answers the second one. What was your major challenge when choosing a residency program?
Hi, I'm Lorella from Loyola. I think for me, it was well, I was part of the class that did virtual interviews. And so even though they might have felt long in the moment, it's only half a day of getting all this information about a program. And so, trying to make an educated decision about what program would be best for me, I felt like I was really getting caught up on details that in hindsight weren't as important. So I was looking for red flags. I remember thinking, oh, this program doesn't, the residents don't write the opt note. That can't be good for training. And like in hindsight, looking back, all these programs would have really been wonderful training, and those little details don't necessarily make a difference. So I think talk to your mentors about what truly is a red flag and what might affect your training versus what's not necessarily a big deal.
Excellent. Thank you everyone for participating. We're going to move on to the residency fair. If anybody has questions for our panelists and speakers, message them directly. We can get their emails out so that you can email them or join them in their virtual breakout rooms for their residency fair programs. Okay.
This is Angela. I'm just going to chime in really quick. I've got MedStar on the phone right now that their link might not be working. So we're trying to get a new one and I'm going to email it out. So if you're interested in MedStar, be on the lookout for another Zoom link. It's not working. And if that happens, just keep an eye on your email if this happens to anybody else. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so email me.